Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. And today I'm going to be doing the best case scenario for both candidates in the general election as of right now. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you're new, and drop a comment down below. And so for Donald Trump, he's actually leading in the polling aggregates by quite a bit. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to basically fill out all the states from my discernment and previous election results and where states are trending. And so if we look back at the 2020 election, Donald Trump lost the election between Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona by around 44,000 votes combined. If he would have flipped these states, he would have tied in the Electoral College and possibly would have won through the House of Representatives, since the Republicans had the majority of state delegations at the time and continue to do so as of right now. And so, looking at Donald Trump's best case scenario, he would in fact win Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, both Dakotas, Nebraska at large, as well as the 1st District with the 3rd District, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alaska, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, and the 2nd Congressional District in Maine by a safe margin, as well as the state of South Carolina, giving him 126 initial safe states as of right now. However, what's very interesting is that Donald Trump is going to add more states in the safe column. If we look at the election results, we see Texas, Iowa, and Ohio all voted for Donald Trump by over 5 points. And in Florida, DeSantis in the 2022 elections recently saw a humongous victory there, a 19-point win in the state, winning re-election there. And yes, governor races are not the same as presidential races, but this is the largest margin that a Republican has won by in the state of Florida for the governorship basically ever. He basically set the record, which indicates that the state has been trending to the right as of recent. And so in a best case scenario, I expect Iowa, Ohio, Texas, and Florida to all be safe states in Donald Trump's best case scenario. If you look at the previous elections, we see that Texas voted safe in 2012. Iowa and Ohio, have basically been trending Republican ever since 2008. Even to an extent, Florida has as well. You see that Florida over time has been shifting, 2.8 in 2008 for Obama, a tilt margin for Obama in 2012. Then Trump won it by around a point. And then now Trump is winning it by 3.5, despite the popular vote actually getting more Democrat. And so that state is definitely going to be in the safe Republican column in that scenario. And for the safe Democratic states, we have California, DC, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Vermont. Those are the states that would go safe Democrat in this scenario. If you notice, Hawaii and Maine's 1st congressional district have not even been listed as those states as of right now, because they will actually vote under 15 points for Joe Biden in a best case scenario for Donald Trump. Looking at the likely Republican states, we do see that Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada are voting, very close, decided within 3 percentage points, all of these states right here, including North Carolina. However, the problem there is that Donald Trump is actually winning the popular vote by around 7 or 8 points in a best case scenario. And so really looking at that, you would basically see states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania become, 12 to, 13-point victories across the board. Michigan would be an 11-point win, Wisconsin 13, Pennsylvania around 12. You'd have North Carolina be borderline safe. It would almost be a safe margin. Georgia would be an 11-point win for Donald Trump. Arizona around a 10-point victory. Nevada, you'd see it be like a 13-point victory for the former president. So he's making gains, in these swing states. And you'd also have Nebraska's 2nd congressional district vote likely Democrat in the scenario. You would see states like Washington and Oregon vote likely Democrat. However, they'd be way closer. Washington would be an 8-point win for Biden. Oregon would be around a 6-point win for the incumbent president. You'd even see a state like Hawaii probably vote for Biden by 12. Even though the Maui fire disaster did cause Biden's approval rating here to drop quite a bit, I still think that the state's Democrat nature will not allow it to flip, and I think he would still carry it in this scenario. Now, Connecticut and Rhode Island, I still think would be likely states. However, you see that I have not even filled out some of the other states even being a likely Dem. The only state left is actually Maine's 1st congressional district as of right now in that column. For the lean Republican states, you have the following, which would be New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia, and New Hampshire, including Maine at large being in that category. So you do see a humongous shift to Republicans. If we look New Mexico, 10.8 percentage point victory for Biden. Minnesota, 7.1 percentage point victory for Biden. Georgia, 10.1 percentage point victory for Biden. New Hampshire, 7.4 percentage points for Biden. Maine at large, 9.1%. You're seeing these huge margins in those states. And now they are leaning Republican in Donald Trump's best case scenario. And when we keep filling out the lean Democrat states, you see Colorado be around a 4 point percentage point victory. If Donald Trump's winning the popular vote by 8 and Colorado's a 4 point win, the state would be voting 12 points to the left of the nation. In 2020, it voted around 7 points to the left of the nation. And so that would realistically make sense, especially considering the fact that Colorado is a very left trending state, and I expect that trend to continue in the 2024 presidential election. So Colorado being lean wouldn't be crazy. Illinois would be around a 2 point victory for Biden. This would be way closer than the 17 point victory he got in 2020. This would mainly be Donald Trump getting almost 30% of the African American vote. Donald Trump would be winning Hispanics nationwide, and he'd probably be winning the white vote by over 15 points in the scenario. Those are kind of the demographics we'd be looking at in this electoral college scenario. And we would even see a state like New York narrow up under 5. I think it'd be around a 1 point victory for Biden. The polling does have the state, within 10 points as of right now. And I think if the polls continue to trend towards Trump, I think it's going to be a bad warning sign. However, I don't think Biden, even in Trump's best case scenario, will lose the state. And the last lean state in this category would actually be Delaware. As of right now, the state has been right trending. In 2016, it only voted for Clinton by around 11 points. And so we have seen the state actually trend to the right, ever since previous cycles. However, Biden did kind of revert it a little bit since he is actually from Delaware. However, I do think once Biden is not on the ballot, it'll probably be way closer. I will expect it to vote under 10 points for the Democratic nominee in 2028 as of right now. But in a worst case scenario, I think Biden would probably hold on to it by 4, which is crazy because it'd actually be a larger victory than all of these states combined. I think that he'd probably win it by 4.5. Colorado by only like 4, 3.5. Illinois would be a 2 point win for Biden. New York could possibly be even within 1. It kind of depends, but the only tilt state on the map would actually be Biden barely holding on to the state of New Jersey. Would be a super close race. You'd kind of see something similar to the governor's race from 2021 there. Will Phil Murray barely eked out a victory against Jack Ciattarelli in that race, and you would see the state barely narrow up for the incumbent president, and he would narrowly eke out the state in a best case scenario. So Donald Trump getting 347 electoral college votes is my projected best case scenario for the former president as of right now. And the next matchup we're going to be doing now is the Biden best case scenario. Now, unfortunately for Biden, his approval rating is now lower than Donald Trump's. He's having quite a few problems with his base. I'm basically going to lay down some ground rules for this. So basically, Biden's best case scenario would probably be winning the popular vote by around 4, 3.5 points. So to be a little bit conservative to Biden, let's say he wins the popular vote by 4 points. What do I think would happen if he won by 4 points? I think he could pull out a victory. However, it would be extremely narrow. We would see, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, all these states would still be, safe Republican in this hypothetical scenario, and Iowa and Ohio would fall into the likely Republican column. However, they'd be over 10 point victories. I would expect Trump to win Ohio by around 11 and winning Iowa by about 12. South Carolina would even be safe in that scenario. Florida would be likely. It'd be around a 7 point victory for Trump, and then Texas would be a little bit over its original margin from 2020. It'd probably be a 6.5 point win, which would be a 0.9% increase from the 2020 presidential election. Trump would really struggle with his base here if a lot of people don't turn out, due to the fact that people think the election may be rigged. This could definitely influence the results. This is the most realistic scenario where I think Donald Trump could lose the election if at least 10% of his base or more really thinks that he could end up losing the election. And you may say, well, why is Biden's best case scenario so much closer than Donald Trump's best case scenario? It's actually because if you look at the new polling now, registered voter polls actually favor Trump opposed to likely voter polls. And so that means the more voters turn out, the more likely Trump actually wins by a bigger margin. So that's actually what I'm taking into account. A year ago, Biden's best case scenario would have looked a lot better than Trump's best case. Trump's best case a year ago probably would have been 312. Biden's ultimate best case could have been like 319, him keeping all his states, winning North Carolina. But the national environment has definitely shifted quite a bit. We would see a state like Alaska narrow up. I think it'd only be like a 8 point victory for Trump in this case. I would think it would narrow up. Maine's second would be likely. Maine's first is completely safe. And we have California, Oregon, Washington all being safe, including Colorado. I actually think Colorado would be around a 17 point victory for Biden. I think Hawaii would still narrow up, even in a best case. I think he'd probably only win it by 24, 25. New Mexico would be around, probably 8 or 9 points for Biden. It is going to trend significantly to the right of Colorado, but I think it would still end up voting for Biden by a likely margin. Illinois would be around a 16 point victory for Biden. You'd see a lot of the Northeast, still be, pretty competitive, however, or a lot safer for Biden. However, I think New Jersey would actually vote under 15 in this scenario. Trump would still improve with certain demographics in the scenario. However, I do think Biden, in a best case, would perform better with the white vote. So Trump would still make gains with Hispanics and African American voters very slightly, but I think Biden would continue to improve with white suburbanites, and that would kind of give him a narrow victory. I do think Maine at large would be likely, as well as New Hampshire. However, I do think the margins would be slightly closer than 2020. We could see Maine be like an 8 point victory for Biden, New Hampshire be like a 6 point win for Biden, and a best case scenario for him. New York, I think, would be around a 19 point victory in a best case scenario for Biden. He would underperform there. So you would see signs of that happening. He would still erode some of his base. Virginia would still be a likely margin. It would probably be actually an 11 or 12 point win in the scenario. He'd probably improve in Virginia because you would see the suburbs continue to trend, heavily to the left. And you'd see a state like Minnesota probably vote for Biden by around 6.5 points. He'd regress in some of the rural areas, but he'd keep most of his base, in the Democratic areas of the states. And so we essentially have our traditional swing states from 2020. Now, Nebraska's second would be lean in this scenario. Now, you may be wondering, why is it lean? It's because of the fact that it has been redistricted to favor Republicans. So I actually think in this scenario, despite Biden winning the popular vote by 4, I think he would actually only win Nebraska's second by 3, maybe even 2.5 points, just because of, the circumstances that we're in with the district. I think it's going to be a lot more Republican favorable, but Biden could theoretically still hold on there. It could be possible. Now, North Carolina, I think, is a swing state. Biden has no reach in. He probably would definitely not improve here. Trump would probably end up winning it by around 2.5 points in a best case scenario for Biden. Biden would still kind of hold on to some of his base, but I think he would kind of falter there. The state hasn't gone Democrat since 2008, and that's when Obama had ridiculously high black turnout, and Biden's really not going to even get that this time around. He did get it in Georgia, but I think in North Carolina, he's probably not going to be able to pull out that same coalition there. Now, the one state that I do think Biden probably ends up losing, no matter what, is Georgia. I think it'd be close in a best case scenario for Biden. I think Trump probably wins it by around 0.5 point, but I think that Biden is just bleeding so much African American support that I think it's almost going to be impossible for him to hold on to it. And Trump's actually at 251 electoral college votes in this scenario. The election is really close. Now, for the lean Democratic states, we actually have Michigan here. Now, you may be like, well, the Israel Hamas thing is going to hurt Biden here. Yeah, it would. It would probably bring the state down to like a 1.2 percentage point victory, which would be way closer than a 2.8 percentage point victory win. But you would see Trump underperform in some of these rural counties, especially if his base is not turning out in full force. That would mainly be the thing that actually doom him. Both candidates would essentially drop in votes. If Trump would essentially maintain maintain his turnout from the 2020 election, he'd be able to pick off Michigan by probably 0.3. But in this scenario, he does end up barely losing it, just by 1.2%. Now, what's actually quite interesting is that I think in a Biden best case scenario, he actually does better in Pennsylvania than he did in 2020. He probably wins it by like 1.8%. You do have these suburban areas around Philadelphia that are trending super hard to the left. And I think if Biden is improving with that demographic and not with African American and Hispanic voters and young voters, if he's improving with suburbanites, I think that Pennsylvania would actually be a bigger victory than Michigan, which would be really interesting. And now you do have the very big hot take of this. Wisconsin would be lean a Democrat. Now everyone's going to be like, whoa, lean Democrat Wisconsin. How is that possible, in a Biden best case scenario? The reason why I think it'd be possible is because number one, there is a huge polling miss every single time in Wisconsin, and that's because of the rural areas just being very, very, hard to poll here. But I think Trump, in a scenario where his base is not turning out due to election integrity, maybe he makes a couple gaffes or whatever, the economy improves, if that were to happen, I think that he would lose some of his base in rural Wisconsin. I think Biden would be able to still kind of hold on to some of these margins. I think in like Milwaukee, he would be able to hold on, 37-point victory. Dane, he'd probably win it by around 49, 48. Ozaki, I think, could actually get closer. It'd probably only be like a 5-point win, a 6-point win for Trump in that case. And so I could actually see Wisconsin being around the same margin as Michigan in this election. And then we have the two final states, Nevada and Arizona. Now, Nevada, I think Trump is basically set to win Nevada almost no matter what. The polling looks really good for him there. If Biden's regressing with Hispanic voters nationwide, even by a couple of points, I still think Trump's going to be able to pull out Nevada. And for the final state, we do have Arizona going till Democrat. Now, the reason why it doesn't go lean Democrat is because I actually think that Trump is really improving with Hispanic voters in Arizona by so much that it's going to offset some of the trends in Maricopa. But I would have to give Biden this in a best case scenario for him, just because of the fact that the state is trending very left. Maricopa is a very big growing city. I think Biden would be able to win Maricopa by maybe 3 points, but Trump would overperform in some of the rest of the state. But I think that it would just be not enough for Biden to lose. I think Biden would probably win the state by half a point in this case, possibly. That's probably what you would end up seeing in a best case scenario. And so that essentially leaves, Texas, Florida, you would see Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, Iowa, Nevada go red, and the states that are essentially up for grabs this cycle, an expanded battleground map of sorts would essentially look like this. These are all the states that would basically, voted for either candidate in the best case scenario that I talked about. This is essentially what you see for the best case scenario for each candidate. This is basically each candidate's floor. As of right now, Trump's floor is 257 electoral votes. Joe Biden's electoral floor is at 191. And so that is basically it for this video, guys. If you guys did enjoy this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to go ahead and follow the Twitter and join the Discord in the description down below. And I will see you guys very, very soon.